So my body's going a bit crazy like that at the moment.
Yeah.
So just let myself feel it.
Yeah, yeah, just let yourself feel it. So I'd be on the floor, and quite often I was by myself, right, because nobody would speak to me, and I had no friends, right. So I was living by myself, and so there's no one to come and rescue you or anything like that. So I had to go and just do that each day, and I just did that each day.
On a mattress?
Well, I didn't try to do it. My body just went into that state when I allowed myself to breathe. And one of the things that you must do, by the way, and I must write that down, diaphragmatically. How do you spell breathe? Here we go.
Into your tummy.
Is that right?
That'll do.
Just put tummy.
Into your tummy.
I would have just put breathe from the diaphragm.
I would have said into your tummy.
Chi breathe.
First century life, would you have had to have cleared those to get to 20 seconds?
Yeah, but I explained yesterday, remember, that all of the memories from a first century existence, or any existence, get passed through the emotional filters of your parents at the moment you reincarnate. Right? So all of those memories got passed through my mother's and father's emotional fears and all of those kind of things. And I've had lots of, obviously, experiences in 2,000 years, and all of those experiences got passed through my parents' emotions, which grossly distorts all of those experiences.
Did you have negative experiences in the spirit world?
No, certainly not. But all of those things that happened in the spirit world got passed through, the memories got passed through the emotional distortions of my parents' filters. You follow me? Because those emotions get impressed upon the soul of the child at the time of incarnation. Right? So what happened was, for example, in the spirit world there was some feelings that I had about always being the first person to enter into a new sphere, into a new dimension. So there's been times in my life, all the way through my progression, where I've been the first person to get to a certain location and no one else was there. Right? Now, that was a beautiful experience for me at the time. Right? Every new sphere or dimensional existence that was created because of my new soul condition, right, was a beautiful experience for me to experience. But passed through my mother's filters of abandonment and loneliness, what did it become?
Your reality.
You're on your own, baby.
I'm on my own all the time. I'm on my own all the time. I keep having to, be out there all the time and nobody agreeing with me all the time. Nobody wanting to understand. Nobody understands me.
The trailblazers.
That's what it became. Is that, you follow that? Like, that's how all of these experiences through these filters become a totally different experience.
Become the sum total of.
Sorry?
It becomes the sum total of your reality.
Yeah, so while all of these things are emotions within me, which all need to be released, obviously they're not what I felt at the time. Right?
No.
They are quite different than what I felt at the time. But the result is the same as what you feel. The result is that you have these feelings too within you, don't you? Right? Of being abandoned and being alone, nobody understanding you. Now, how many of you feel that? Right? They're all common emotions, aren't they? Right? And so that is the same thing that's happened with me, but just a different way. That's all. That's a different way that it entered me.
So AJ, the only reason that you've come back and experiencing all those filters is so that you can understand what we're feeling. Is that
Yeah, I didn't understand in the first century what you were feeling.
really?
Yeah.
Even though you were human.
Yeah, but what happened in the first century was that I had an existence that began with the clearing out. In the spirit world, there's a process that, in fact, all of you at some point will probably go through, or you will observe. And hang on a sec, no, probably most of you are not ever going to go through it personally, because you'll probably deal with all your emotions here. But many of you may observe this occurring after you've passed, and that is, there is whole areas of the spirit world which are devoted to the healing of emotional baggage within the soul of an individual that's caused by everything that's outside of their control. Right? In the book of Robert James Lee's called Through the Mists, I think it is, there's a description of what's called the magnetic chorale. And there's a chapter on that if you want to read it. And it's a description of what actually happens to the souls of people who have been damaged quite badly by the environment around them without any of their own emotions being involved. And what happens is groups of people get together and actually heal that person of all the emotional damage that they were not responsible for.
Like being murdered.
Yeah. Right. And so be careful. Some of the I'm talking about mostly a lot of the childhood stuff, right? Right? It's not stuff that happens as adults, because remember a lot of that is due to the laws of attraction, right? So we're talking about a lot of the childhood stuff being released. So what actually happens to them is that a lot of that childhood stuff that caused all the damage gets released, and only the things that you made decisions about that caused damage remains within you that you need to deal with. Right? Now, that process happened to me as soon as I was born in the 1st century. A group of spirits got together and actually did that for me in the 1st century.
Why did they do that?
Because they had been asked by God to do those things for me. They had feelings from God to do those things.
Were they like celestial?
No, they were 6 sphere spirits. There were no celestial spirits in existence at that stage.
Was that called the virgin birth?
Yeah, what they call a virgin birth.
Obviously,
Obviously there was no virgin birth.
Of course, yes,
right?
but
But once I was born, these spirits got together and cleared away the emotional damage from my parents right at that point.
Are you the only one that's ever happened to?
Yeah. Yep.
How did they do that though if they weren't connected to God? Because I thought you said 6 sphere spirits aren't connected to God.
Well, I'm saying they're not at one with God,
Oh.
but they can have a desire to talk to God and so forth, just like any other person.
So do they get messages from God?
Certainly they did, yeah. And certainly they still do,
I see.
yeah. Yeah. But
So
they're not at one with God.
There's
And
a
they
difference
never-
between being connected and...
Well, they're connected in the sense that they can hear a message from God to do something.
Just like we can.
Just like you can, whether you're connected to God or not. Right? You can hear a message from God and do something about it. And often things happen in your life right now where this actually does occur.
Intuition.
Right? Where you trust your intuition and follow that.
So
Or-
did celestial, sorry.
I was going to continue with the story if that's all right.
Please.
Yeah. So there were no celestial spirits at that time. There was no 7th sphere at that time. Right? There was no 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. None of those spheres existed at that time. None of those dimensional spaces. And what happened was, once those emotions were cleared, then I was left to develop just with what actually happened from that point on. And in that process, I didn't understand. I could feel everyone else's emotions, right? I could feel my own mother's emotions. I could feel my father's emotions. I could feel my friends' emotions and so forth from a very, very young age. But I could never understand from the point of view of having experienced them myself. You follow that? Because it wasn't a part of my experience. So of all the spirits in the spirit world, I have been the spirit who's been the least educated, right, about what it's actually like to feel, from a condition of error, feel and process emotion.
So this makes you a better teacher now.
Yeah,
than in the 1st century.
Yeah, because in the 1st century, I could feel all of their emotion and I could reflect back at them what was going on. But I had never experienced what it's like. So there was always this feeling that people had around me that I didn't understand really, that I didn't really get them.
Yeah, so
Right.
you can't really meet them right where they are then.
Yeah, that's right. And that's my soulmate could. My soulmate didn't have the same experience as myself, and she could. And so that even throughout our spirit life, that was a major thing for me, trust, because I trusted her, a lot of her direction and her feelings about people, because I knew that I hadn't had the same experience she had. Right? So I was actually severely limited by that particular event, in a way. So while I understood everyone's emotions, I did not personally experience them ever. And so therefore, how can I really understand?
But you had a lot more love than everybody, though, didn't you?
Yeah, but that was just a reflection of my father's love, which is obviously a huge thing, which you'll know when you're feeling that yourself. Like, you know how powerful that love is. And obviously I displayed love in every circumstance, because obviously I was at one with God. However, the feelings that a lot of people had when I did that were feelings of anger or resentment. This is recorded in the Bible, a lot of this, right? How many times people get angry and resentful with me? I would say a truth. Oh, you're a hypocrite. Right? What's a hypocrite by definition? A person that says one thing and does another, isn't it? Well, the majority of the Pharisees that I spent time with were that.
Yeah.
So I just said that truth. How did they take it? Not very well. Not very well.
Just one question. Like, so being human with our emotions and baggage, which, like, so many of us have done workshops and etc., to heal, and it's, you know, been such a hard journey for me anyway, personally.
Yep.
Is this one of the most difficult experiences in the universe? Like, to be human and with this emotional baggage?
The most difficult experience, I believe, in the universe is to actually live in a state of error and come into truth. That is so difficult because I believe my error to be truth. And that is and see, in the first century I wasn't faced with that issue. Like, if you can imagine, you have no error within you, just imagine that for a moment. So there's no emotion of anger, there's no emotion of sadness, there's no emotion. You've only got emotions that are happy, blissful type of emotions. You're not at one with God yet, right? You're not at one with God yet, but you feel these emotions constantly where you're just happy, all the time you're happy, everything in life's going pretty smooth, law of attraction's working great because you've got none of those causal emotions within you. Imagine that for a moment. And then someone comes along, like AJ, and says, oh, you can decide to be at one with God, and this is how you do it. Are you going to find it easy or hard? I reckon you're going to find it easy. Because you've got no emotional baggage. You're not coming from a position of error. You're coming from a position of truth. The only thing you need to learn is humility. You only need to learn to seek love and seek truth from God. That's all you need to learn. Those three basic things. You're already doing the third, which is feeling all of your emotions.
This